Hello. Happy Saturday, everyone. Thank you guys for coming back this weekend for the book chat. Hello. If you have any questions for Susan for Against the Loveless World, please put them in the question box. I hope you guys are enjoying this beautiful, well, hopefully beautiful in your corner of the world, weekend. Hey, Amy and Emily. Hello, Melanin Beauty. Let's see if we can get her in here. It's raining in Jamaica, but still you're in Jamaica. I'm going to be in Jamaica next month and I can't wait. Hello. So if you haven't heard the news, next month, next month, we're in April already. This month, we're reading Chlorine Sky by Mahogany Brown, and it's a novel in verse, and it is incredible. I hope you guys will pick it up and join us on May 1st, because Mahogany Brown will join us on IG Live, and it's going to be a great conversation. Hello, Dishing on Books. Thanks for coming back this weekend. Let me see. Oh, I have a copy here. So this is our April book, Chlorine Sky. Totally books that you love, Chlorine Sky. Yes, it is phenomenal. And the audiobook is great too if you're into audiobooks. So definitely make sure you pick it up. And it's a quick read, and you can make sure you're here with us on 5/1, May 1st. Oh, it's your first time reading novel in verse. Yes, it's really interesting. I like it a lot. So because it's National Poetry Month is why I selected Chlorine Sky. Oh, you love Susan's work? Yes, I still need to read more in Janine, so I'm excited about that. Oh, I'm not sure. Check our bookshop reading Nook and see if you can if they would ship to you there in Pakistan. So the book is in our bookshop, bookshop.org. And you guys let me know if I missed Susan. I don't think I have. She was having some trouble last time, so hopefully. Hello, Night Owl Bookworm. So how many of you read Against the Loveless World? I listened to the audiobook and read the book, and I absolutely loved it. Such a great book. If you haven't read it, don't want to miss out on this one. Oh, I missed. I've never read it. Yeah, it's great. She has Mornings and Janine is another good one too. So I've heard, hey Mari, so sorry about your pup. Oh, okay. Hopefully we don't have a repeat of last weekend. It really is phenomenal. It's such a great book. Okay. No messages, so we're going to wait a couple more seconds and then we'll jump into it. Oh my gosh, Nahr was such a great character. So strong, so fierce. Yes, you need to move it up on your TBR, for sure. You definitely need to move it up. You won't regret it. I think, like, for me, Nahr, she just did what she had to do to make things happen and work for her life. And she was unapologetic about everything. And the characters, the friendships, people that you wanted to hate, but ended up maybe kind of liking them in the end or understanding why they were the way that they were. I don't want to give anything away. But yeah, definitely. I think you should move it up on your TBR. You will not regret it. Okay, let me see. Oh my goodness. She's in Google Hangouts. That's why she's not here. So that's the problem, people. Hold on a second. She's been in Google Hangouts. So hold on a second. We'll get it together. Is that vagabond behind? Yes, it is. It's not bookcases. Yes, that is vagabond behind me. These things do happen. So thank you guys for hanging out. It's just, it happens with technology when you send invites. So we'll get there. Make sure I don't miss her if she pops in. Okay. Someone asked me, is this Vagabond? Oh, Vanguard. Yes, it is Vanguard. And have you read Vanguard Dishing on Books? On my phone. I'm telling you, it's something with technology, for sure. And the sad part is, I don't know how long she's been in in Google Hangouts or Meet. I feel bad. Pink V Eve, you said you would love to borrow those books. You know what? I don't loan books. I don't mind. That's just the selfish part of me. I don't loan books. I would rather gift someone a book, but I don't loan my books. It's the weird thing with me. I don't loan my books. Because, people may eat and spill stuff on your pages. Fingers may not be clean, or they may bend the corners. No. Have I thought about posting a list of my 5 favorite books? Oh, there's Susan. You know what? If you go on my bookshop, on Diverse Spines Bookshop, I have a section called Favorite Spines, and they're there. But I will give you a list of 5 favorites. I'll do that. Okay, let me see. How do I do this? If I can request to have her join me. Susan, if you see a button that says request to join, just hit that. Because I can't seem to request you. How does that work? There it is. Boom, got it. Did it work?
Okay.
Skip that.
Oh, okay. Hi. Sorry.
No apologies. No.
I was trying to do it from my laptop, and I had to have my daughter come help me.
And when you said from the laptop, I was like, I have no idea either. I don't know how to do it from.
Sorry,
I'm so sorry. And then I saw your message that said you were in Meet, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'll check my email.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking I must be in the wrong place because I was sitting there waiting, and I was really early this time because I'm not going to do this again.
I'm so sorry. So that was my fault, but at
No
least
worries.
I did check the email. So, okay, you guys. Let me tell you, you have some people that are so excited. We've just been chatting about your work and how awesome you are. And so we are so excited to have you.
Thank you. And I'm really sorry about last time.
No problem. And a lot of people came back. So, hey, that's to your credit.
Thanks for not giving up on me.
No, not at all. So, you guys, we are doing our March. I'm in the right month. All my days are running together. We're doing our March book of the month, Spine of the Month book chat with Susan Abulhawa. Is that right?
That's good. Yeah.
Tell me though. I don't want to be good. I want to be right. Oh, the pup.
Yeah. It's Abulhawa.
Abulhawa. Okay. And the dog's name is
This is Luca.
Luna. Okay. Yeah. Luna.
Luca.
Okay.
Yeah. It's funny. Every time I'm on the phone or on a call, he has to pop in. He's just.
You know what? And I saw one of your interviews where he popped in as well. So
he always said he's so needy. He's like,
We don't mind at all. We don't mind at all. So I have to tell you, this book is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
I mean, I listened to the audiobook, I read the book, and I'm obsessed with historical fiction. I just think it's absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
I mean, it's, and so many people.
I appreciate that.
I mean, it's a wonderful book. So we're just going to dive right in.
Okay.
First, I want you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us a little bit about Against the Loveless World.
So, I'm Palestinian. I'm a former biologist, an accidental writer.
Oh, okay.
The Against the Loveless World is my third novel. It follows the life of a woman who has many names. Nahr, Yaqut, Almas, Nanu, and she starts her life out with very modest ambitions in Kuwait. She wanted to get married, have babies, have modern appliances that would be the envy of her friends. But she very quickly finds herself as a jilted young bride. And from there, life kind of sweeps her up. She becomes a sex worker, working for an escort. We follow her life through a lot of the headlines that I think Americans knew about, but really knew nothing of what any of it meant for all the humans who lived through it. And the invasion of Iraq, the occupation of Kuwait, the Gulf War I and II, as they were mystically called in the United States. So Nahr's life is kind of her evolution, her moral and intellectual evolution, sort of was structured geographically. And that's how I structured it in the book.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, I mean, the sections are divided into her geographic location, and she sort of evolves dramatically with each different location that she's in, and she's in those locations because of events and forces beyond her control, and she's really just trying to survive them. The entire novel is told from something called the Cube, which is an Israeli solitary confinement cell. And so the tension in the novel is trying, you know, understanding how she ended up there.
And let me tell you, the tension in the novel, I just could not, I mean, I was up so many nights late, I could not put it down. And so I just want to ask you, I know you talked about the events, Kuwait and Palestine. What inspired you to write the book?
Well, I was born in Kuwait, and I'm not a citizen there. We were refugees, my family, from Palestinian refugees from the '67 war. And my family, I was in the United States in college at the time. My family lived through the occupation of Kuwait, and then the U.S. invasion. And so I wanted to, you know, all of my books sort of touch on different aspects of Palestinian life. I mean, our society has been fragmented by the colonization of Palestine. And so we exist in different, you know, we're in a diaspora. I mean, there's Palestinians who continue to live under Israeli occupation. There's Palestinians who still live in refugee camps, mostly in Lebanon. And there's Palestinians who live in a diaspora that's all over the world. And in this book, I wanted to focus on the diaspora that lives in the Arab world. And one of the big concentrations was Kuwait, because after what we call the Nakba, when the first wave of expulsions happened, when Israel expelled, you know, Palestinians the first time, 80% of the population. It was in 1948. That coincided with Kuwait's oil boom, and so they needed a lot of labor and professional class labor, and to basically build their country. And so Palestinians recently dispossessed flocked to Kuwait to make a living, and so there was a huge segment of our population that lived there. And of course, like everything that happens in the Middle East, every time there's, you know, Palestinians tend to be like always the biggest victims, and that's what happened again after the first Gulf War. So in this book, I wanted to write about that particular aspect of Palestinian life and Kuwait, because of my proximity to it, both, you know, because of my family and because of my, you know, being born there and my history. I wanted it to take place there. And the other part was to, you know, I really wanted to talk about sex work. You know, it's a big open secret in the Middle East. And, you know, the sex industry is universal. The exploitation of women, of girls and boys is universal, and it spares no society. So people with power everywhere will, you know, exploit women and kids and boys. And so I want to write about people who live on the margins, you know, who are forced to teeter on the margins, who get excluded from society. So that was really interesting to me as a writer to explore that.
I mean, and you do it so well, and it's one of those things where it's, you know, you truly, for me as a reader, you get to, I learned a lot that I didn't know. Like you said, as Americans, you know the headlines, but then I just learned a lot, and it was an educating experience for me, which made me want to learn more. But did you have any reservations about telling the story and how it would affect you, you know, back in your homeland?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I was my biggest reservation was actually about not falling into Orientalist traps. And what I mean by that, you know, Americans or the Westerners in general have certain ideas about Arab culture. You know, they have a certain idea about Arab men as being, you know, backward, and or women being, you know, either hypersexualized or hyper oppressed.
Hmm.
And and now if I were writing in Arabic as the first language, this none of this would have been a concern. But because I'm writing in English, I was very careful and attentive to not falling into those kinds of Western stereotypes, and at the same time, I wanted to tell the truth.
Hmm.
So that was something I was very conscious of. Ordinarily, when I write, I have a singular loyalty, and it's really just to the characters.
Hmm.
And to just telling their story honestly and truthfully. And what that means is ultimately that I'm writing for a Palestinian audience, just by default, because I'm writing for the characters who are all Palestinian. But in this novel, it wasn't that way entirely, because I was very attentive to this sort of Western gaze, in a way, and not wanting to give an inch to into that.
I
And
can appreciate that.
yeah. So
Yeah, I definitely can appreciate that. I actually love that. So yes, definitely. Can we talk a little about your research?
sure.
Is it you know, now that it's been out for a while, and so any type of real life experiences or real life characters, just a little bit
Yeah.
about the research that goes into the book.
So I kind of mostly write what I know.
Hmm.
And I mean, there's a lot that's obviously researched. I mean, I've never been a political prisoner.
Right.
And that was probably one of the things that I felt the biggest sort of ethical responsibility towards, because, you know, there's all kinds of issues of representation and all the questions surrounding that. So, which is why I created this sort of fictionalized environment of the cube.
Hmm.
And I did a lot of research on that. I watched tons of videos with former Panthers. I got to speak with members of the Move family,
Hmm.
who had been incarcerated for over 40 years, many of them, and who had, you know, been just released in the past few years. Um, Janine, and Janet, Africa, Ria, Africa, Delbert, Africa, um, and I of course watched a lot of interviews with former Palestinian political prisoners. I spoke with a Palestinian political prisoner. So just kind of getting that, and of course I did a lot of research on the psychology of isolation and all that.
Hmm.
So that was the another thing that I felt really careful about. But I always do a lot of research on the physical environment, like what flowers would be in bloom when and where,
Hmm.
for example. So like if one of the characters is in X place during X season, what are they seeing around them
Hmm.
in terms of, you know, in terms what are they feeling? What's the weather like? What color are the trees? And, you know, things like that. So that was a lot of I did a lot of research on that, and I had to do a lot of chemistry research too, because of the whole phthalates issue.
Yes.
Yeah, like can you make phthalates in your bathroom, and what ingredients would you use? So just there was a lot of, you know, lot of research into things like that. So,
Right.
The sex industry is, I actually kind of brushed up against that many, many years ago. And I had sort of firsthand knowledge of it, things I witnessed quite by accident, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there was some research involved in that, and speaking to women that I knew had lived through that.
So I want to talk about, there's so many themes in the book. You know, there's women's rights, resilience, feminism, liberation, friendship. I mean, there's just so many different themes in this book. And I just want to know about how the character of Nahr unfolded for you. Because I love her. I think she's super unapologetic and she's determined. I just loved her spirit. And so I just want to know, how did that character unfold for you? And talk about, we're going to talk about her names. I thought that was so interesting, the three different names.
So yeah, I'm happy that you love Nahed, because I loved her too. She was, sorry, those are my neighbors.
That's okay.
I kind of fell in love with her too along the way. And this is like the truth with all of my characters. They kind of unfold organically on their own in the writing process. Like, I don't plan them. I don't have a good sense of them to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really only through the writing process that they sort of take form, take color, take texture, sound, smell, and I get to know them through, you know, multiple iterations of the novel. And yeah, I mean, it's a fun, interesting, intimidating, and labor intensive process.
Right.
When that happens. Yeah.
It's interesting that that you don't plan out the character, so you kind of unfold as you go along. So she has three names,
Mm-hmm.
and can you talk a little about how these names came about? And, you know, was that something that, talk about the relevance of those names?
Yeah. So,
That's not giving away too much, and we're not spoiling it for anyone.
Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, there's not too many spoilers.
Yeah, that's not
I mean, so Nahr is the name that her mother wanted to name her.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, Nahr in Arabic means river. And in 1967, during the war, when Palestinians were exiled, they were forced to cross the Jordan River to get from Palestine into Jordan. And along the way, one of the bridges collapsed. It's called the Allenby Bridge. And this is real history, actually. And Nahr's mother made a promise to the river that, because some people were drowning and they got, you know, sucked in. And she made a promise to the river that if it didn't swallow any of them, she was going to name her child after the river.
Mm-hmm.
And she was pregnant with Nahr at the time. And so, you know, she couldn't name her Jordan because that's a weird name in Arabic, tipped for a girl. So she named her Nahr, which is an unusual name in Arabic, but it can still be a name. But her father, on the day she was born, recorded a different name on the birth certificate. He named her Yaqut, which is actually a gorgeous Arabic name. It's very rare, but it's really pretty Arabic name. But he named her Yaqut after his mistress at the time.
Yes.
Which caused a big, you know, fight, as you can imagine, with his wife. And then her little brother called her Nanu, you know, as it was just
four names. That's right.
A nickname. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then when she became an escort, she took the name Almas.
Yeah. So I like that she's able to, for me, I thought she was able to endure under multiple names because each name kind of carried its own weight for her. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought that it was done very well. Let's talk about writing violence, and how was that for you? And what was your, I guess, the healing process for you after writing the violence and then telling it, you know, for the reader?
I mean, I think I think we all experience violence
Mm-hmm.
in different forms. And I think as women, we experience more. And then as women of color, we experience even more.
Mm-hmm.
And writing, I mean, it's the most natural thing to include, you know, that violence in a character's life, because it's real.
Right.
Sorry, that sound is my dog just going nuts over.
Yeah, I was going to say that that's one thing that I came across on the pages, that it was very authentic and it was very realistic.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, and in a way, writing those sort of dramatic scenes
Mm-hmm.
are easier for me than writing the scenes that are. I don't know. I think because they're so intense and hot and emotional for me
Mm-hmm.
when I'm writing, that they come out more easily. It's just it's strange. But when I'm writing the scenes where she's describing her inner world, her inner thoughts, or describing the flora and what's unfolding, and those are harder for me
Mm-hmm.
to write than the really dramatic scenes, whether it's violence or usually the violence.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not so much that it's just sexual or physical abuse. You know, you have violence where there's structural violence,
Uh-huh.
of unjust institutions. You have the destruction of homes and cultural practices, people being displaced and in exile. So it's a combination of different types of violence that people are experiencing. So
And
writing.
I think the reason it's easier is because there's something a little bit cathartic about it. I mean, as a Palestinian, you know, I mean, I've experienced the violence of exclusion, the violence of the checkpoints,
Mm-hmm.
of sexual assault, of you know, all the things that so many women of color experience in every society.
Right.
And it's inside of us somewhere, right? And sort of when you get this outlet, it comes out in a way that feels meaningful. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
there's always rewriting and fixing it and going over it, and none of those things are ever sort of romantic. It's not a
Right.
romantic process at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually really labor intensive and I guess intellectual labor. Yeah, just hours and hours at the computer and laboring over a sentence and how's this work with the paragraph before. Yeah.
Right. And so, in talking about the violence and everything, let's talk about the relationships, because I don't want to say I had a love hate. I did have a love hate relationship with Nahr's relationship with Umbak. Umbarak, yes. So
Yeah.
yes, that you wanted to not like her,
Yeah.
but then you see how they were so similar. You know, both being abandoned by their husbands, and just, can you talk about that relationship? Because she becomes a sex worker, working for her, which kind of I guess she exploited her, blackmailed her with both, and just really made me angry. But then as the story evolved, I kind of ended up
Loving her.
liking.
Yeah. I loved Umburak.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting for me to write that relationship.
Oh my goodness!
And the reason I really loved Umburak is because she was initially, when I first conceived of her, she was meant to be a small character, a very transient, sort of minor person who comes into Nahd's life. And again, so this is this process where things kind of unfold in a way that I hadn't planned, and she just had a presence, and I couldn't let her go. I couldn't. Her role in the story, as you know, sort of ends very early on in Nahda's life.
Mm-hmm.
But she was one of those characters that just had a really big personality, and she stayed with me, and she stayed with Nahr, and she's there till the end.
Yes.
And I really loved her character because precisely because of what you described, because you don't know whether you should hate her or you should love her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the truth about all of us, right? We're complicated.
Yes.
We all do things that we all hurt each other in one way or another. And we love each other at the same time. And so I Umburak was also trying to survive. She was a woman
Yes.
herself who had been victimized,
Mm-hmm.
and she was trying to do what she could to survive.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she loved Nahr, right? She grew to love Nahr,
Mm-hmm.
and she was loyal to Nahr.
Yes.
And ultimately, she was the closest person to Nahr, even her family. Like, she knew her in a way nobody else knew. And I love these relationships between women.
Mm-hmm.
And I come from a large family of women, and the relationships are complicated.
Yes.
And so that was, so I loved writing that relationship, actually.
I just love the tenderness between them. I just, and then that, I don't know, I like that they were not perfect because as you had said, no one's perfect. And so people have, good and bad things that make up their quality, make up their making. So I like that you showed that it just made it so much more real for me, and the struggles that they had.
I appreciate hearing that.
And then there's so many other people in her life. I mean, you had Bilal.
Yeah.
Yes. And then there was a gay Arab man in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was just they were such rich characters that all played a role in her life. And so can you just talk about the other characters that were connected with her?
Yeah. So, yeah, so when I kind of look back on it, and then I hear, readers like yourself sort of describe this whole tapestry of different themes, and I know it's complicated, and I can hear it and I can see it now in retrospect. But at the time in writing, I never sort of set out to do all of that. I think if I did, I would be too intimidated.
Well, that means you're really darn good if you don't set out to do that, because
I don't think I would know how if I wouldn't know how to plan something like that. No way. But I say that only because it emerges organically in thinking about their lives. Because if you think about our own lives, like all the themes we've encountered in our lives, right? I mean, we're not just one thing. And so, or two things, or even five things. We're many, many things. And over time, like we do encounter all of these themes. And if I was going to write Nahr's story over decades of her life, it makes sense that all of these things would emerge and she would encounter them. And so that's how it happened. It kind of unfolded organically. The relationship with Bilal, who ended up, being the man that she really fell in love with, was the other relationship that was really interesting for me as a writer to write, because by the time they met each other, they were both older, and life had sort of put them through the ringer, so to speak. And they were quite broken people in different ways. But the intimacy that developed between them initially was it was emotional and intellectual, and you're not sure if it's ever going to be physical, because all of her sexual experiences had been traumatizing in one way, and her relationship with sex was just really fraught with trauma. And for him, his body was physically broken by the occupation.
Yes.
And so having them come together and finally be intimate physically was so interesting to me to explore, and and I really, as I was writing, I just wanted them to tell me when they wanted it to happen and
Yeah.
how. And I just really kind of was writing at the same time, sitting back and just saying, okay, whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, let
Hmm.
me know. Um, and and the way it came out was really satisfying for me as a writer.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I really I love that relationship, in part because of the way their intimacy unfolded. Because I have to tell you, like, I really don't like the way sex is often depicted in popular culture.
Hmm.
Um, it like in Hollywood, it's, when it's, if it's not violent or whatever, it's like wonderful and it's perfect and
Yes.
everybody fits, right? It just fits. Maybe one person will say, oh, you got a condom, and
Yeah.
then it's like, oh yeah, let me get it. But that's the only moment of awkwardness if you ever
Right.
in Hollywood. And but real life is a little bit messier.
Yes.
And especially when two people have that much baggage.
Hmm.
So I liked that. And I liked writing that part of their relationship, um, precisely because I just wanted it to be real. And again, this was another one of those moments where I just was really in tune with not only a Western gaze, but also with all of the biases and the taboos and the brainwashing and the Hollywood ideals and all of these things that I had, that had been injected and imbued in me as a young woman. And you just kind of want to shed all of that crap and just be real, and let's see how
Right.
it works with this couple.
Hmm. So speaking about that, the Hollywood and the Western gaze, in presenting this novel to the publisher, how was that journey for you? Because I know sometimes just from other authors
Mhm.
that, publishers may say that this won't be received well by the public if it's not written in a certain manner or to a certain audience. So how was that for you?
Yeah. Um, I really appreciate that you asked me that. um, so uh, when this book was being shopped around, I changed agents, and my agent felt really positive that she was going to be able to sell this book so easily, because Mornings and Janine had been such a huge success, and it had such, an international platform, and likewise my second novel was. But I told her, Anjali, because don't be surprised if you get a lot of slam doors, because this is still a Palestinian story. It doesn't, it doesn't put Israel in a positive light. And it was a lesson. I think it was a real eye opener for her. I mean,
Hmm.
there were, like I said, lots of slam doors, and like, this is a good novel. It's really well written, um, but when we sold it, it was the perfect home for it, though.
Good.
So Atria Books bought it. This wonderful publisher,
Hmm.
um, Michelle Herrera Mulligan, also a woman of color, and I think that matters. I mean, I say that because
Yes.
it matters, because publishing it's still, very, very white.
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
and I think you still see that in what books get chosen, what books are submitted for prizes. And
Hmm.
um so I'm so happy to be with them, and she read it, and she liked it and appreciated it. um there was a scene that I was asked to remove,
Okay.
uh and it ultimately became a question for me between loyalty to Nahr and
Hmm.
Umburak. So I had to choose between those two characters.
Understood.
And the reason is, so there's a place in the book. So as you know, Umburak is she's Iraqi origin, and without giving away spoilers, she, after the conquest, after the occupation, and attack by the United States, and she's ultimately sort of sent to Iraq at one point, and goes back where her family and her, you know, her origins are, and she just sees this way, you know, it's a wasteland. The United States laid waste to Iraq. I mean, it's just one of the most high functioning Arab societies and ancient civilizations in the world, and it was battered to nothing. And naturally, and Barak has certain feelings about that, and she has certain feelings about the United States, and she's a fictional character. And she says in the book, she, first of all, she hates the United States, and I think she says that, you know, and she says, "I'm glad 9/11 happened to them. Those two towers were like two dicks just fucking the whole world."
So
and yeah, my publisher, it wasn't that they were offended by it, but she was very honest. She said, "Look, this is people are." Subconsciously, even that the sellers will not want it because of that.
Right.
And a couple of, I had one friend actually read it. He's a white man, and he said I got stuck at that line and it made me angry. And he's a friend who knows and loves me.
Right.
And I felt angry that people were angry about that.
Right.
Because I felt like this is a fictional Iraqi character, and she can't even be mad in a book, in a novel. She can't even express something. Even she can't express hatred, even though I mean, wouldn't you think that's the most natural reaction to this other nation completely and utterly devastating, not just your life and your family and your country, but an entire ancient civilization, an entire history,
right.
like 20,000-year-old history laid to waste. And she had like, so it was, and it's also in my nature to dig my heels in and say, no, I'm leaving it. You don't have to do anything. You know, I don't care. But, you know, I think, you know, the people around me that I love and trust sort of worked on me, and it kind of became like, okay, like this is like a one-liner in a book by a secondary character. Is that the hill you want to die on?
Right.
So I did remove it because ultimately, again, so it was loyalty to, it was a choice between loyalty to Barak. Do I represent you, your very valid feelings, or do I have a loyalty to Nahr to for her story to be more widely read and whatnot? So I chose Nahr in the end, but that was real, and but it is part of the, you know, the things, and you know, something I had to take out because
I appreciate you sharing that part. I mean, that's like, you know, something that you don't have to reveal, and I appreciate you sharing that.
I mean, I actually haven't, I think this is the first time I've shared it, so but you know, I feel like it's important because this is, you know, this is a public conversation, and it's important to talk about these publicly. That why, you know, I think Americans in particular, who have so much power in the world, whether Americans realize it or not, to be able to talk about the effect we've had on other nations, and to validate the feelings they might have about us, not necessarily as people, as individuals, but as a nation, as a country, as a political entity that, you know, I mean, most Americans aren't, you know, they're not personally dropping bombs on places or anything like that. But we, you know, it's part of our collective effect in the world. And why can't we talk about these things?
Right.
Why can't we just hear a fictional character who hates us and who says why she hates us?
Yes.
You know?
But when you're saying that, it reminds me that as women, real people, you know, we're silenced and censored.
Mhm.
And then even as a fictional character, you're
Yeah.
silencing a fictional character, a woman of color.
Right.
So it's like
Right.
it's all fluid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So any backlash or any banning of your work or censoring?
Yeah, it's banned.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just your facial expression. So it is banned.
Yeah, and I expected it to be. So it's actually getting published in the Arab world, and in translation in Arabic. Excuse me. And already, I think it's banned. I know it's banned in Jordan. My first book is also banned in Jordan, Mornings in Janine.
Oh, okay.
Um, I don't think it's banned in Kuwait officially, but I know it's discouraged. People aren't able to buy it there.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
And so have you traveled back since writing these novels?
Yeah, not since this last novel, but yeah, I go
Okay.
back. I mean, they're not getting arrested or anything like that.
Right.
It's not like that there, but
Okay.
yeah.
So, okay, good. Before we close, let me see, we'll have some questions. This has been such a great conversation. Mari wants to know, what did Nahr teach you? That's a great question.
Yes, it
Because
really
my
is.
question was, what did writing this novel teach you? So that's perfect.
It's all wrapped in together.
It's all wrapped into one.
So I can't separate Nahr from the whole journey of writing this, of writing her and writing the novel, and what was happening in my personal life. And I lost, two really important women in my life. They were both two mothers, my birth mother and a woman I considered like my mother. And in writing her, because of that loss, I was also confronting, confronting a lot of the contradictions that of my own life and the regrets I had around those relationships, and the memories, the wonderful memories and the bad ones. And so all of that is wrapped into the creation and unfolding of Nahr as a kind of that defiance that she had, and that insistence on living her truth, and even trying to figure out what the hell her truth was in the first place.
Right.
Was, for me, it felt like I want to be like her. That's what I want to not really care anymore, and just because I think, I'm 50 years old now. And I think I've spent most of my adult life, yay, you look way better than I do.
Go ahead.
Just unlearning all of those messages, those explicit and implicit messages that we get as women, to not be too aggressive, not be too insistent, not be too loud, to sacrifice, to accommodate, to accept blame when it's not yours, to all of these things. I mean that's how I was socialized, and I spent a lot of my life just sort of taking on all this crap, and accepting things, and that I no longer accept, and Nahr is part of that journey for me, and so she's partly that new part of me, and partly that part that I want to be.
Oh my God, this is so awesome. That is lovely. That's
that question. Nobody's asked me that before, but it's really nice to kind of hear my own thoughts.
I'm just so surprised. I'm glad that Mari asked this, and I definitely have it on my notes. What did it teach you? A couple other things, because we started a little bit late, if you don't mind.
No problem. I'm happy to continue.
I noticed, and maybe you can expound on this, the element of trees.
Mm.
olive tree, fig trees. There's a lot of nature in the book. And so can you talk a little bit about that, how that
Yeah.
coincides with the culture?
Absolutely. So, I come from a long line of farmers, olive tree farmers. Actually, my family is from this one little patch of earth called the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. Um, and prior to that, we were in a village that dates back to the first century called Deir al-Hawa, which is my namesake, Abulhawa. And so I have in general for Palestinians, trees are hugely important. And like most indigenous societies, we there's a closeness with nature, with the
Mm-hmm.
earth. And even if you go to Palestine and you look at the way Palestinians built their homes and built their cities, there's never any such thing as urban planning or molding the topography to fit your plan of a neighborhood or whatever. It was exactly the opposite. People built their homes, they built their villages based on the topography. You nestled your house according to how the hill was shaped.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't cut the hill to shape your house for your house. And there was always an emphasis on preserving, as just not just treading gently, right? Not being as unobtrusive as possible in this this magnificent terrain that we're lucky enough to be in. Um, and olive trees in particular were hugely important to economically, and olives are a huge part of the Palestinian diet, and so they have an ancient cultural attachment, or symbolism because of that, because they're so important in our diet and in our commerce and in our celebrations. So olive trees to Palestinians, as well as like a lot of citrus trees and almond trees and
Mm-hmm.
fig, they become part of the family in a way. It used to be not so much anymore because Israel has confiscated so much of the open terrain, and we're
Mm-hmm.
kind of urbanized and ghettoized and more shrinking more and more land. Um, but it used to be that you planted a tree when there was a newborn, and that was their tree, and then you had trees of somebody's great grandfather or something, and
Yes.
and and so yeah, they were important to the family, they were important to the community, they were important to the nation, to the economy, to the traditions, and um, so and Israel actually understood that, and that's one of the reasons why they literally have had like policies of uprooting Palestinian trees. I mean, according to the World Health Organization, Israel has uprooted almost 2 million Palestinian
Mm.
trees. At the same time that they've been planting for decades, they've been planting a lot of fast-growing non-native spruce and pine trees that are native to Europe, which is ironically, I don't know if you heard about all the fires that they had a few years ago. There were massive, massive forest fires.
Mm-hmm.
And it was precisely because of these non-native trees, after so many decades of like the pine needles that don't belong there being acidic and sort of killing all the undergrowth, and then finally just being this a tinderbox. That's another story. But yeah, so but I can go off on that because
Yeah.
yeah, trees are hugely important in our society, and uprooting one or cutting one is like killing something.
Yeah, you can tell it comes across in the novel. Lastly, I think I saw a couple of questions in there, but when I discovered where the title came from, I was just done. I'm like, okay, now I know. I love her forever. So
Oh yeah.
can we talk about, oh my gosh, I was just like, how did she do this? Talk about how you came on not calling the novel Against the Loveless World.
So Against the Loveless World is a line from it's it's a quote from James Baldwin,
Mm-hmm.
who is one of my personal heroes, both literary and revolutionary heroes. He in his in the Fire next time. If you've never read it, I think that's a must read. It's a must read for everybody in the world. Yes. Oh, there you go. It was in his letter to his nephew, little James.
Yes, that's so incredible. I was like, oh my gosh. So lastly, someone wanted to know, they've read everything that you've written, and when's the next book coming? What's next for you?
Thank you so much for that. I'm actually working on a children's book. Working in the pandemic I haven't really been able to focus much. We actually had more loss in our family.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, COVID kind of ravaged my family, and we lost, actually yesterday, our last matriarch. No, it's fine. Thank you. And so it's I haven't written much, but I am working on a children's book. I have another story in mind. I'm actually also thinking about a biography of someone. Yeah, so
okay, good.
Do my best.
Good.
Thank you.
And then lastly, Totally Booked wanted to know, how did your family feel about your this book and then your other novels?
They're very proud of me. I kind of I've my relationship, when you say family, like in my mind, it's all the extended family. It's the cousins, the aunties, and stuff. So that's how just
and chosen family, and it's awesome.
Yeah. So they're very. I feel very fortunate. They're very proud. Even at the same time, I didn't follow the kind of traditional path that the rest of my family did. I ended up here, and I'm not married and and all that. And,
right.
Yeah, they. I'm blessed. Yeah, they're proud of it.
Good. I cannot thank you enough. I mean, I just absolutely love your work. And I'm going to say this. I purchased, like way back when I first got my Kindle, I purchased your first book. And so I have yet to read. I'm going to go back and read it now. That's on my backlist. It's on my backlist. I'm definitely going to read it. This audiobook is done so well.
Really? I've heard that the production wasn't great. I was curious how.
So for me, I thought it was good because when I'm reading names that I don't know how to pronounce, I want to read them. I don't like reading and just making it up myself because I want to know how it's supposed to sound and how it's supposed to be pronounced. So for me, I appreciated that. I don't know, maybe people were looking for something else, but I mean, I like the narrator. I thought it was done very well. So it worked for me, but I mean, everyone's different, as we said.
So the narration, the narration was fine. The narrator was fine. You know that was me, right?
Was it you?
Yeah, that was me reading it. That's why, because I'm not an actor, and I felt really.
I didn't know it was you.
Yeah, that was me.
I totally must have missed where you said this is the author, because I did not know. Really?
Yeah.
Well, how dare they say the production? I thought it was good.
I mean, no, because I mean, it's not just the reading, but there's a whole production, sound production, and because it happened during the pandemic and all the studios were closed, so it had to be done in a really unorthodox way. I was literally just this is another thing nobody has known. It just gets revealed to you. I had to create this whole sound room in my shower. It was like padded with blankets, and I was sitting in my shower for hours on end reading and recording because there was no studio, nothing. This was early on in the pandemic, and so that's why.
Well, bravo to you. Yeah, I totally must have missed that because I definitely, I like the.
Well, I'm glad you didn't hear any weird things in the production.
No, I didn't hear your dog. I didn't hear anything like that. It was good, and there's no echo. There's no echo. So that's good. And you know what? A lot of authors probably should not narrate their books because I've had some that have and I couldn't do it. So I had no idea that it was you. So that's
Okay,
great.
good. Fun.
Good. So
Nice.
I can't thank you enough for joining us. I know that everyone has been responding and posting pictures about reading this book with us, and they've all loved it.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
so,
so much. Thank you.
great. So be well and take care and have a great weekend.
You too. You too.
Take care. Bye-bye.